Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. You bang on time for In the Market here on AM Live. It is the 22nd of August 2019. And we have a very interesting show today, of course, looking at what is happening in the market sector. We shall be looking at now that particular decision that has been taken by Tullow Oil to take, this particular exercise of oil exports to 2024. What does it portend? Well, they're saying, well, the infrastructure is not really in place as far as that crude oil of extraction is concerned. So we shall be putting this also on the table with the panelists here this morning to discuss that. That is another issue that also need to be keenly looked on, because also we have some sector of the society, or sectors of the society, who are actually taking special umbrage with the non-disclosure of Tullow Oil, that agreement between the Tullow Oil and the government as far as some of the contractors are concerned. So what does it portend in this age where we have the Access to Information Act? We have this and other stories that we'll be telling you. Also looking at the tax issue, right? Also companies avoiding tax, and some of them have been caught up in this track or that particular, should I call it trap? That is a tax evasion trap as well. So tax justice as well. Also the World Bank has given a report that Kenya is not justifying how it is using its tax revenue. That is another story on the table this morning. Amongst others, you know the drill. You can hit us on Twitter. AM Live is our Twitter handle. AM Live R or AM Live also is our profile name on Facebook, and 20686 our SMS portal. Ready? As always, we have Patrick Obath up and early. Good morning. Good to see you, sir.
Morning.
So some of these issues that I've just teased out this morning that we're going to be talking about, just maybe your headline thoughts on, first of all, the oil. I know that has been also, and you're an engineer, and you in that sector. Do we need to do a lot of streamlining?
I think this country is going through this oil quote dream for the first time.
Yes.
And with the history of oil globally, with the successes you've had in countries like Norway,
yes,
the pits that you've had in countries like Nigeria, in the Delta region and so forth, there's a lot of suspicion around when you're trying to develop oil. And I think we are, as a country, we're at a point whereby the suspicions are heightened.
Yes.
People have had very high expectations on a very small resource, relatively speaking, on a global basis. And we need to change the national conversation.
Okay.
Right from that point of view, so that we really allow the development of the industry. And if you look historically, in the 50s, who were the important people oil-wise? It was the Seven Sisters, the 7 big oil companies globally. They had the say, they came in, they had the muscles, and they came in and they basically developed, and they took most of the profits out of every country at that point in time. It's because the governments and the people who own the resources were not really up to speed as to how to tackle the issue of resource sharing at that point in time. Then you found that over time, the national oil companies have then grown, and they then began to take over the oil field. So you look at people like Aramco in Saudi Arabia, you look at Petronas in Malaysia, you look at PDT in Thailand, you look at a lot of these national oil companies. They grew out of the transfer from the Seven Sisters, as it were,
yes, to
the national government over time. And it was a structured process. As they became more and more knowledgeable, then they took over. And what you're seeing is that the essence in a lot of countries that are getting oil now is that we are ready. We are like those national oil companies in Saudi Arabia, in Malaysia, in Kuwait, in the Emirates, who are already very well established. We need to grow rather than just basically jump in at that spot. And so I think that is where we have a problem.
All right. The commercial viability also is questionable in the first place. Or did we have this pie, or this is a pie in the sky optimism that we are, maybe biting a bigger chunk than what we can actually swallow?
It's just that. I mean, 750 million barrels, a billion barrels is nothing.
Is nothing compared.
In this day and age. If you're finding that people like Saudi are producing that amount of oil per day, right, and Kenya is going to produce that over a certain period of time, really we're a very small league player. Right? It can, I think what it does, it will actually inject a small level into the economy or money into the economy. It will also help us to develop our capacities. But what we hope happens in this country is that is just the tip of the iceberg. That over time you will then begin to discover a lot more oil in Kenya, and therefore then use the knowledge that we have now to then exploit it better in the future.
Thank you. Right. Thank you. Patrick, we shall be looking forward also to getting more from you as well. We want also to welcome in studio Dr. Gituro Wanaina, who is the chair of Kenya School of Government, also a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, state of economy is what you're looking at today.
All right.
I don't know what has been your highlight in the past 2 weeks as far as the state of economy is concerned. Just one.
One highlight.
Yeah, very brief.
I think we need to do more as a country because the last 1 week we have been looking at the budgets.
The budgets,
across across all the parastatals, and this is because of the certain shortfalls in terms of funding the big agenda. And I think we need to relook ourselves as a country in terms of the 4 items in our big 4 must continue.
Yes.
So my take is that perhaps, and probably not this country, we need to look over the world. Probably the question you're asking ourselves, are we headed to a recession?
Are we headed to a recession?
Yes, and I think if you look at economies like Germany, you look like the economy like the USA, they are thinking of cutting taxes. And very interesting discussion which was coming yesterday that government has no business erasing the GDP. And I think one thing I would say is the government needs to go back to the private sector, which is actually the one which is the engine of growth. I think that's what I would take when I look at what has been happening the last 2 weeks or so. Yeah.
All right. Also the census as well. So on Saturday, everyone is advised to be at home. I don't know your plans for the weekend. I know you wanted to go to Bahamas.
Weddings. Yeah, because we have been planning for the last 6 months. Your wedding is on Saturday. By 5 o'clock, you can't go nowhere.
So there will be no guests.
But I think it's something perhaps you can find some flexibility.
Okay.
It's not cast in stone, and we have a whole week of actually being counted. I think it's not a question of coming with a hammer and saying from this time or whatever. But I think it's an important session. I also believe very strongly, and I've argued this before, you really don't have the physical count of people. The technology is there, the big data analytics helps you just on a daily basis to know how many people have died, how many people have been born. So down the next 10 years, we'll probably not do the physical counting. There are countries which are not doing the physical counting, really, but they get it on a daily basis. And I look at it from this perspective. You look at the headman or the chief, as they call it now. The chief knows the kid which was born in the village. The kid knows who died. And that kid can have the platform. We are using with the Safaricom.
Thank you.
To update on a daily basis.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Collins Odote, good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Debarl. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Also, I think the big debate that we need to be looking at is the repeal of the interest rate, which is gaining traction right now. September is just here, and people are eagerly waiting to see which way to go as far as this rate is concerned. What are your thoughts, briefly?
Debarl, I don't think we've had the last of it yet. I think banks are continuing to make a case for the repeal. But you can see that there are still concerns from, because remember this is a bill that was actually pushed by the legislatures. So I don't think that the repeal will come as easily as one would expect. And because the larger issues, I was listening to the MP for Bond on last evening, and I think he was raising the issue that as we repeal it, what are we getting in return? Because I think what is critical is how do we ensure that the interest rates do not blossom to the rates that they were in the 90s and the early 2000s. So balancing that, I think, is a critical issue. But I think for me, I also got in when my good friend was talking about the census. I think an important aspect for this country, for the fact that it will help determine how we distribute our resources, but it will also help determine our politics. That's why you hear MPs are telling everybody, please go home over this day. And it is interesting that at this age in time, people are still being told, go up country so that you can be counted there. I think it just means how important this is. But there's one other thing that for me is a highlight over the last 2 weeks. I think we should, it is saddening that close to a month after the time that the division of revenue bill was supposed to have been passed, that hasn't happened. So you are having innocent people at the county level
who are suffering,
and we seem to be playing political games. If I watch the National Assembly at the Senate, I think that's unfortunate.
Right, thank you. And yes, we've seen also someone really working on set. I will tell you who this is. Of course, he was running late, sir. Yeah, some few minutes shy. This is James Mureo. Good morning, James. Good to see you.
Morning.
Yeah, you just walk on my set, and we thought actually it's an elephant behind Collins Odote early in the morning.
Thank you.
Good to see you, though.
Asante.
Karibu.
Asante.
Right, so maybe the highlights of last week, and congratulations, actually, an award that you got last week. Tell us more about it. This is Achievers Award 2019.
Yes, thank you very much, Debarl and the panelists. Yeah, I'm a bit late this morning, but
You started earlier.
you did?
No.
You started with 2.
Or maybe I should have given you time to actually relax. Yeah, you're huffing and puffing, I can see. Yeah,
No,
but
no,
in the
no,
mean,
no.
as you collect your thoughts, huh?
No, I'm okay. I'm all
You're
right.
okay? Ah,
yes,
all right,
I'm
good.
100%. Yes.
Sharp guy.
It's just that, yeah, last week has been an interesting one, and yes, I got this award, the Voice of the Achievers Award, and I want to really appreciate this panel session because it is from here that we've been able to voice a lot of important issues that affect the business community, and I think this group from Netherlands has been sort of following around and looking at who has really been championing the cause of the business community. And I happen to have been selected by a panel, and it was a great honor. In that award, I think one of the most moving moments was one of the recipients was a survivor of the genocide in Rwanda, and she gave a harrowing experience of what she went through.
Okay.
It was really moving, and but otherwise, the other people were Kiza Bisije, P.L.O. Lumumba, Lady Joyce Elwoj, people who have actually, in one way or the other, impacted. Right Honorable Raila Odinga was also a recipient of this award for what he has done in terms of championing democracy. Yeah.
Thank you.
But in terms of what has been going on last week, I like what I've just heard from Odote here about the appropriation bill that needs to really be sorted out. It's causing untold suffering right across. And I think it's time we put politics aside and sort the situation realistically and deal with it as it really should be dealt with.
Thank you.
Yes.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
Now, I'll be remiss, of course, if I don't also congratulate Dr. Collins Odote on his new appointment. You can tell us more about it. Yeah.
Thanks, Debarl. As
What is all
colleagues,
these people are getting away with?
While you're away.
Where are we?
While you're away. Yeah.
this is not a
The
big
promotions were happening.
You're on the way.
Patrick, what have you got?
You have been chair for 2 minutes for too long.
We always live in hope.
No, but mine is a small thing. I think just last week I got the responsibility of being in charge of our postgraduate center, in charge of environmental law and policy at the University of Nairobi. So for the next 3 years, I'll be trying to ensure that we have more people who are doing masters and PhD programs in environmental law and policy. So I welcome Mureo to come to the school. Rest of Kenyans.
Yeah, professional, continuous development. The CBC,
Yes,
continuous
yes,
professional
yes,
development.
yes,
Thank you
yes.
so much, and we congratulate you all
Thank you very
on
much
these
for that.
achievements as well. Thank you. Right, let's see what is the good, the bad, and the ugly in our dailies this morning. We begin with the Daily Nation. This is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation today. Uhuru Raila plan tour to rally support for BBI draft is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation today. And it says political deals seeking to fulfill their promise of enhancing peaceful coexistence in the country. The two leaders will help Kenyans understand the direction the country is likely to take. This story continues on page 4 of the business of the Daily Nation this morning. And the flagger on top there reads, changes, handshake team expected to produce bill. You can see also a related picture there, President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga. This is a final picture, July 25th there, 2019. Follow the inside the Daily Nation on page 4. Also, Keroshe boss in trouble over tax claim. Director of Public Prosecution Rudin Haji wants the Brewers Chief Executive Officer, Mrs. Tabitha Karanja, and her husband, Mr. Joseph Karanja, charged with failing to pay taxes amounting to 14 billion shillings. We'll give you more of his story in our bulletin this morning, but it is tucked away on page 9 of the Daily Nation today. Also, Kenya poised to Win UN Security Council seat is another story that you can follow on page 30 of today's Daily Nation. Vote at AU, in which Kenya beat Djibouti 37-13, guarantees Nairobi as the sole candidate for the prestigious, of course, seat. And that story continues on page 30. I've mentioned that. Kitani tells of love sealed with cash. Car. Former chief of staff in DP's office reveals details of a marriage Meru Senator Linturi insists did not exist. The story continues on page 8 of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, win for teachers as medical cover enhanced. Teachers have a reason to smile after their employer enhanced their medical cover. The move by the Teachers Service Commission, which literally gives teachers a reason to smile, is a major boost to the professionals across the country who have been pushing for a better medical cover. 3 billion shillings is the amount of money received by Teachers Service Commission from the government. 318,000 teachers across the country to benefit from the new scheme. Teacher or TSC has increased inpatient cover to between 750,000 and 2.5 million shillings. Optical services now 45,000 shillings, up from between 10,000 and 25,000. Dental cover raised to 35,000 from 10,000 shillings, to 25,000 shillings. Maternity cover now 100,000 shillings to 200,000 shillings. This is, of course, a good boost to teachers. You can follow the story on the back page of the Daily Nation today. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Standard. And this is what is the splash today on the front page of the Standard. Kenyans return 25 billion shillings hidden in old bank notes. This is all about the demonetization. And here's the cash. A lot of money actually were hidden under the mattresses and maybe some stores somewhere in the house. Mattress cash, it says government order on new currency during Madaraka Day celebration has seen billions outside the banking system resurface in the month of June alone. This story continues on page 4 of the Standard today. 201 million shillings pieces of 1,000 notes in circulation as of June 2018. That is what we have as a splash today on the front page of the Standard. Also, no soccer as CS orders bars closed at 5 p.m. on Saturday. This is all about the censors. English Premier League fans will have to watch Liverpool play Arsenal in their homes this Saturday after Interior CS Matiang'i ordered all bars closed at 5 p.m. And also, regulator blames rot at KPC for unending wars. Energy industry regulator, in a damning assessment of state-owned farm, calls for structural change to clean its damaged image. That is a story that you want to follow on page 37 of the Standard this morning. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Star. And this is your splash this morning on the front page of the Star. How Kitani gave Linturi millions, turning ugly. It started as a fling and blossomed into costly marriage. She loved his 3 children, took blended family on extravagant holidays. This story continues on page 4 and 5 of the Star. And of course, you can see the faces of them. This is, it says, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. It says here as the caption, Meru Senator Mythical Linturi and Marian Kitani at the Milimani Law Courts yesterday. Of course, some very details or deep, I don't want to call it gory, but of course some deep details were revealed yesterday in the court about their marriage. Also, Mudavadi Ruto to face off with Raila in Kibra poll is another story that you want to follow on page 6. Deputy President William Ruto and NC leader Musalia Mudavadi are plotting a major political face-off with ODM leader Raila Odinga in the upcoming Kibra by-election. The Star has established that Ruto, a fierce critic of the opposition chief, is raring for a political duel, with Raila raising the stakes in the November 7th by-election. The story continues on page 6 of the Star this morning. DPP orders arrest of Kiroshe Bose and her husband. Director of Public Prosecutions Nurdin Haji has ordered the arrest of 2 directors of Kiroshe Breweries Limited over 14.4 billion shillings tax evasion allegation. The story continues on page 8 of the Star this morning. And as I've mentioned, of course, we'll give you the gritty details of this also in a news bulletin today. On the big grid, streets up and brothels, illegal sex work booming. This is what is in the big read today, page 12 and 13 of the Star. This morning, the People Daily up next, and this is your splash today. Why Sosion is in deep trouble. On the Edge, it says teachers union boss in a fight of his life as top officials plot to oust him amid reports that only 9 out of 38 NEC members are on his side. The story continues on page 4 of the People Daily this morning. Also, DPP orders arrest of Kiroshe directors over 14 billion shillings tax row is a story that you want to follow on page 6. Detectives last evening stormed Naivasha-based brewer premises but failed to find CEO Tabitha Kiranja and her husband. Also here is all about the divorce story. I spent millions on Brock Linturi. Kitani tells court estranged wife says she was legally married to Senator. Also, she invested in him. That is a story that you want to follow inside the People Daily this morning. Let's buckle down to business a bit and see what the Business Daily is holding for us this morning. Uber riders to pay 29% more in win for drivers. Looming price increases a big victory for digital taxi drivers who have engaged in frequent strikes pushing for price reviews to cover high maintenance and fuel costs. The story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Banking matters, and we can see here Kenya Parliamentary Caucus on SDGs and Business Chairman Gideon Ochanda, Kenya Bankers Association Chairman Joshua Oigara, SME Advisor to the Office of the President Anne Mutahi, and KBA Chief Executive Abilolaka can be seen here during the launch of KBA's Strategic Plan 2019-2023 at the Sarova Stanley Hotel yesterday. That is a standalone picture there. And also, AU vote moves Kenya closer to UN Council seat. Kenya has moved a step closer to gaining the clout it had been seeking to help influence geopolitics after the African Union endorsed its candidature for the non-permanent seat in the UN Security Council. The endorsement, which came after 2 rounds of voting at the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa yesterday, guaranteed Nairobi the position of Africa's sole candidate for the council seat. Djibouti was the biggest contender as well. This story is tucked away on page 4, and things, yes, they're looking up for, or they're coming up roses for Kenya as far as this particular city is concerned at the UN Security Council. So we're crossing our fingers to actually make sure that we secure this AU vote moves Kenya closer to UN Council cities. A story that you follow, or you can follow on page 4 of the Business Daily today. Kiroshe bosses face arrest over 14.4 billion shillings tax row is a story that is tucked away on page 5 of the Business Daily this morning. Also, KRA links rise in farming to tax shortfalls is a story that continues on page 12 and 13 of the Business Daily. Today's digit is 10 billion shillings. The cost of planned flyover to run over Nairobi railway station between industrial area and the city center. Also, Forex deposits hit 620 billion shillings all-time high. Foreign currency deposits held in Kenyan banks rose to an all-time high of 620.5 billion shillings at the end of June, driven by diaspora remittances, horticulture exports, and a lower import bill. The story continues on page 19 of the Business Daily this morning. Let's move on and we see what we have across the region. Not really across the region, but across the borders. We go to Tanzania and pick up the Citizen for us. No need for anxiety over Forex reserves, says BOT. The Bank of Tanzania allays mounting fears and says the 5.2 billion, that is $1 billion currently in reserve, is enough to cater for Tanzania's import requirements for a period of at least 5 months and 1 week. The story continues on page 2 of the Citizen. And also, SADC moves to curb trade barriers is another story that continues on page 2 of the Citizen. EA bankers cautious as digitization gathers pace. That is, East Africa bankers are cautious as digitization gathers apace. Experts warn that banks should cautiously switch to new innovations and want regulators to keep tabs on the transformation. The story, you have it tucked away also in today's Citizen in Tanzania. Moro Blaze disaster sets grim records is a story tucked away on page 3 of the Citizen in Tanzania. Also, we do have Mwananchi in Tanzania still, and this is your splash today. Ajali ya lori Moro mbaya zaidi barabarani, vifo vyafikia 100. That is a splash this morning. Let's continue and see also what we have as a sidebar story there. Serikali mguu sawa kukabili majukumu SADC. That is a story you can follow inside the Mwananchi. We have a Daily Monitor as well, and this is what is on the front page of the Daily Monitor. If you're waking up in Uganda, Rwanda to open border after deal is a splash. The key 7 issues Museveni Kagame agreed on also are tucked away inside the Daily Monitor. Border residents celebrate Uganda-Rwanda deal. And you can see that particular handshake, President Museveni and his Rwandan counterpart, Paul Kagame, exchanging pleasantries after signing a memorandum of understanding between Uganda and Rwanda at the presidential palace, right, in Luanda, Angola. That is a presidential place they say here. So you can follow the story on page 5 of the Daily Monitor. Also, Biggie Rimana issues new tough rules at judiciary. This is happening in Kampala. The guidelines aim to tighten financial and accountability mechanisms, inland and overseas travel and use of official vehicles. The story continues on page 4 of the Daily Monitor. Also, suspected DRC militia kidnap 10. At least 10 people are said to have been kidnapped from Kanungu district by suspected Democratic Republic of Congo militia since April, with some victims released after ransom had been paid. The story continues on page 10 of the Daily Monitor. Not the Daily Monitor, but this is the Daily Monitor in Uganda. I was thinking I was actually holding the New Times in Rwanda, but this is the New Times now. And it says Rwanda, Uganda sign memorandum of understanding at Quadripartite Summit. That is a story that you can follow on page 4 of the New Times today. President Paul Kagame has said that the memorandum of understanding signed yesterday should be implemented in its entirety. Kagame was addressing the press in Luanda, Angola after the signing of the agreement. And you can see a related picture as well there. The story continues on page 4 of the New Times. Also, Interpol members negotiate pact to combat cross-border crimes. Find all these details of the pact on page 2 of the New Times. Uganda blocks access to Rwandan news website. That is a story that continues on page 3 of the New Times this morning. I wanted to show you also what we have on the front page of the East African. If you've not really grabbed your copy as yet, we can do that quickly, and we'll show you what is there this week. How investors are making a killing from Ebola bones is a splash. From the funds to flow to Congo. It says for the funds to flow to Congo. The deadly disease must cause at least 20 deaths in one other country within a specified time frame. And this story continues on page 12. This is how they're making a killing. And also, as a cyber story, Uganda uses $126 million on Huawei cameras out of war. It says, police say, it's for security, even as they fight off spying claims. The full report, you have it on page 6 of the East African this week. We can try and see also what we have as editorial cartoons today, and this is what we have in the Daily Nation. According to Victor, he's drawn for us this, not this one, I think this is an old one. Let me go to today's quickly. This is what he has drawn for us, and it's all about the betting companies and Matiang'i, right? So they're playing chess there, but who has the chessboard? Right, it's not really at the center there. It seems everything, or who is actually having an upper hand as far as this battle is concerned. Betting companies and Matiang'i. I leave it for you to decipher this. This is what Victor has drawn for us inside the Daily Nation today. Let's see what Garo has drawn for us. And this is the editorial cartoon. And of course, yesterday there was a hashtag, I stand with Bokper, and we can see this is about the FIFA and the monkey. And you know what is the monkey? The racism that is still ongoing as far as soccer is concerned. We've taken care of a monkey, but the monkey is just, of course, covered there by FIFA. So the story of racism still is live and fresh as far as soccer is concerned. This is what Gado has drawn for us today. Let's see what Stano has drawn inside us People Daily. And this is what he's drawn for us. And it's all about Sosion. And you can see the MV Sosion is about to sink, surrounded by sharks. So what is the fate of the Secretary General of NAT, Wilson Sosion? Well, that is still a developing story. So let's leave it at that. But I'll leave it for you to decipher this as well. This is in today's People Daily. Those are your dailies. Let's buckle down to business and see what is our top story. And of course, it's all about this woman that is the CEO of Keroshe. And we'll continue with this particular discussion. But first, Keroshe Breweries Limited Director, this is Tabitha Mukami Muigai, and her husband, Joseph Karanja Muigai, are in trouble for evading tax amounting to 14.45 billion shillings. He says the Director of Public Prosecutions recommends that, well, Botokiv has gone off, recommends that they be charged with over 10 counts of tax fraud. NTV's Mel Miando also reports that the DCI detectives have pitched tent outside his home and office in Naivasha, hoping to make an arrest.
Tabitha Karanja, the founder and CEO of Keroshe Breweries, has often been described as a fearless entrepreneur. But she was holed up inside here for most of the evening as detectives from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations in Naivasha came calling. She and the directors of Keroshe Breweries Limited, including her husband, Joseph Karanja, are in trouble over allegations of tax fraud running into billions of shillings, 14.45 billion to be precise. The Director of Public Prosecutions recommended that they be charged with 10 counts of tax fraud for the period between January 2015 to June 2019. DPP Nudin Haji, in a statement, notes that an audit by the Kenya Revenue Authorities established that Keroshe Breweries had evaded tax through the manufacturing and sale of its products. The company is accused of evading payment of value-added tax in stamps allocated at 329.42 million, Crescent Vodka at 135.4 million, Vienna Ice at 1.7 billion, Vienna Ice rate variance at 9.5 billion, and Summit Beers at 658.5 million. This amounts to 12.35 billion shillings. Similarly, Keroshe Breweries is accused of evading tax on excise duty in stamps allocated at 41.08 million, Crescent Vodka at 55.23 million, Vienna Ice at 233.76 million, Vienna Ice rate variance at 1.52 billion, and Summit Beers at 250.56 million. The total is 2.1 billion shillings. The two are expected in court Thursday morning. Mel Miendo, NTV.
So even as we're talking about tax evasion and tax avoidance, we know also there is a damning report from the World Bank where Kenyan taxpayers are not getting full value for the hundreds of billions of shillings spent on development projects. This is a new report by World Bank stating that particular just figures I've given you, arguing that countries running similar budgets have achieved more than Kenya. In the latest analysis of Kenya's public expenditure, the World Bank says weaknesses in project selection, procurement planning and implementation delays are behind the relatively low public investment outcomes. The report says that Kenya spends about 20% of its GDP to achieve just 0.17% growth in GDP per capita, a measure of how much each citizen will get if a country's wealth is distributed equally. Well, we want to just buckle down to, of course, see, yes, we're fighting and looking for all these tax evaders and people who are actually not paying taxes, and how are we spending the tax? Are we doing justice to our tax revenue collection in this country? So let me just buckle down to discuss with our panelists on this, and to try and keenly look at what is happening on that particular sector with the tax regime so far. Do we need a restructuring as far as tax revenue collection is concerned in this country? And is this the wisest of fashion that we should be acting on people who are avoiding taxes, especially with the recent development of the CEO of Keroche? If you joined us at the top of the hour, I'd introduce to you Patrick Obath, who is the chairman of the board of directors, Standard Chartered Bank, and also he's the vice president at the KEPSA Foundation. We have Dr. Collins Odote, who is an advocate of the High Court, also a columnist with the Business Daily. And we have also with us Dr. Gituro Wanaina, who's the chair of Kenya School of Government, and also he is a lecturer at the University of Nairobi School of Business. We do have with us James Mreo, who is the immediate former vice chair of Kenya Chambers of Commerce, and Stanley Manduku. Stanley Manduku is an advocate of the High Court. Let's continue with this particular discussion so far and broadly look at this particular report by the World Bank, and if we can try and juxtapose that with what we are actually seeing as far as DPP is concerned and following the tax evaders. Patrick Obath, let's begin with you.
When I look at tax efficiency in the country, I just look at the burgeoning expenditure that we have within the legislature, not just the national legislature, but across the whole country. And if you look at the amount of money we spend purely on salaries, travel, water view, and that kind of stuff,
yes,
we have completely overburdened the tax collection that we have in this country. So we're basically collecting tax to pay salaries and pay travel and pay administration costs, rather than pay for for the growth in the economy,
yes,
development, and so forth. And when we had the constitution in 2010, as a private sector, we actually started saying at that time that the government, the size of government in the 2010 constitution was too large for this economy. But I think the thinking then may be flawed now, but then was that this is a small price to pay for peace. Because if you look at that, it was basically the reaction to the 2007-2008 violence that happened in this country. There needs to be a big reversal in terms of the way the country is structured administratively. So the size of parliament, size of Senate, the size of the county assemblies, the civil service itself needs to embrace technology. If you look at all that together, I am sure if that was sorted out, the amount of tax we actually pay in this country would go a long way to actually develop in this country.
Right, but let's just begin from actually the way these tax evaders are being treated. Do you think the DPP acted in the wisest of fashion? Because the CEO takes special umbrage with how this particular scenario played out, that she was not given an official letter, and she stoutly denied that the figures or what we're being told is true. As far as the arrest is concerned, what will be your view?
We are seeing headline issues here. We are not understanding below that what has really happened. In my knowledge,
but the nature of arrest in itself, in and of itself.
Arresting somebody means that there's process that has been exhausted.
Yeah, you don't just wake
right?
up.
You don't just wake up one day and just arrest somebody. So I think behind that there must be something that we don't know. I would expect that if before you go to arresting somebody, you've gone through an assessment, you've given them the findings, you've discussed the findings, you agreed, disagreed, whatever the case may be. Then you go through the tribunal. There is a tax tribunal, basically, that actually then you go and begin to discuss, right? But this looks as though I have committed a crime, right? That something has happened which is criminal in nature, that immediately means you should be arrested. And some of the things I can think of in terms of tax is basically whereby you are, let me just take a wild example. These stickers that are supposed to be applied to every bottle, right? Which is required now by KRA for you to put that on, and KEBS. if those are found to be fake, then it means you have been doing something which is criminal at that point. So if that is the case, I have no problems at all, because somebody has been actually trying to circumvent paying tax by fraud. This has not come out at all. So I think, and you're looking at Keroche, you're looking also at the other one, African Spirits.
The Humphrey
Humphrey
Kariuki
case, yeah? Two large spirits organizations having come out and, and being arrested on almost the same premise. Is there a systemic failure in KRA? That's the question that would come to me initially. It's not about, we've caught people who are cheating tax. Is there a systemic failure, and what caused it to happen? That is basically in the spirits area that you're seeing. Should other spirits manufacturers in this country or dealers in this country begin to sort of worry about whether they're going to be the next ones if there's a systemic failure in the way KRA has been handling this? So I look at this with a pinch of salt.
Okay. Let's hear from Dr. Gituro Wanaina.
Thank you. I think it's interesting that when you have this responsibility of tax, I don't think your conscience is not even the official report. But I think it's interesting because it's all summarized here on page 12 to 13 of the daily, of the business daily. It's summarized. Pages 12 to 13. And probably the debate is there. You can get to it.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah? Go to the, there's a what would I call?
A paragraph?
A graph.
A graph.
Go down a bit.
Okay.
Down. Look at one of the African countries. There's one on your left. Just put it a bit. The one on your left. Yeah. Look at that diagram there. It says a lot. If you look at Morocco, yeah, you look at Morocco, it's getting 26.4. Tunisia, South Africa. These are the big economies in Africa. There's something written there, and I think Patrick went to it. If you read there, it says Tunisia, South Africa, Morocco have clear strategies around tax administration. And I think that's where the bulk of it all. I don't think we have a very clear in terms strategies around tax administration. You can actually be getting 18.1%, Togo 22% of the tax. So there's something really not right when you look at our tax administration here. And I think what comes in, and I think we have said this before, people are willing to pay taxes, but they also to see what those taxes are doing.
That's what we're talking about. If we have that dismal amount of 0.17 compared to these other countries that we're talking about, then it means there's something that is, very wrong with our tax regime in this country, so to speak. Right, but yeah, I will get granular to that. But let's just hear also
and then even the current Director General of Kenya yesterday admitted at the internal depot that some of these have been colluded with their workers. He admitted yesterday.
Of course, we saw that was a headlining story about the collusion and the tax evaders rising to some 20 billion shillings that we can actually, that is just a ballpark figure that I can give this morning. But let's just hear from Collins Odote on this.
Debarl, I think several things. The first issue that I think is critical is if you look at the figures that Wanaina has spoken to, then you will see that the concerns that the amount of taxation that we are being charged is high might not be the full story. I think the full story would relate around two things. Number one is our appreciation as a country as to what taxes really are. And for me, that's the conversation that I would like to take from Keroche Industries. I think several years ago, KRA moved from focusing on tax only as a punitive issue. Every time you miss taxation, there would be people coming with you with stones and hammers, to a much more proactive approach, which is in terms of that what is critical at the end of the day is not so much the criminality, but in terms of how much revenue do we get into it. I think the more we encourage that, much the better, so that the levels of compliance in tax, in paying our taxes increases. But there's a second aspect which I think is critical. And the second aspect that is critical, derived from what you've told us in the World Bank report, is collection is one thing. What we use it for is quite another. And I think that's where there's a huge concern. The huge concern is that a lot of our revenue seem to be going to non-core issues and seem to be being wasted. I don't think that the bigger problem is actually and that's why I disagree a little with Patrick, I don't think that the bigger problem is actually the cost of the legislature. If you look at, the Auditor General did a report, I think in 2014, on the socio-economic audit of the Constitution. And the socio-economic audit of the Constitution actually demonstrated that contrary to what people think, the biggest problem is not actually the size of the legislature. The biggest problem is actually around two things. The biggest problem is around how much money we waste, wastage. And that wastage does not sit only in Parliament. I think that wastage is across the entire government. There's a lot of money that we waste in recurrent as opposed to development, but there's also a lot of money that we waste as a result of graft. And that, for me, is where the work that you see the DPP has been doing is coming into. Because if at the end of the day you collect 10 shillings, and out of that 10, only 3 go to the economy, it therefore means that you are thinking that, yes, I am funding government 10 shillings, but you're actually funding government 3 shillings, because the 7 gets into Collins and Mureu's pockets. And
he will not
I
be
use
here.
that because we don't even get a single shilling.
He will not be here.
And you've seen that in terms of the billions. I think we've talked about this in the past, that if you look at the headlines, you hear about this scandal of billion of shillings, this scandal of billion shillings. Those money do not come from the air. Those money come from our taxes. And I think that's a huge concern for me. But the second thing that I think we also need to think about, around 3 weeks ago, I was almost linked on this show. But I think it's important to always keep in mind that whatever we do, the concept of fair trial must always be kept in mind. And the reason why that's important is
You
because
bring
then we
it
don't-
again. Fair trial again, okay.
Yes, I must say it. Because then sometimes it detracts us from the core business. And the core business must be, let's not use side shows. Let's ensure that everybody gets their fair trial so that at the end of the day we focus on the real things. And that's why for me, when I look at the headlines, the report from The Nation, or the editorial, about some of the reforms that are taking place in the judiciary, including digitization, I get happy. Because then we can ensure that there's efficiency in the process of taking everybody in court. So that the people that Stanley represents will be represented on substance and not on process. There'll be no concern about, I didn't get witness statements, I wasn't told about the reason why I'm being arrested. The question will be, did you commit a crime or not? And I think when we go that way, then we'll be able to have a system which is more efficient and a system that focuses on the right things.
Right. Let's hear from James Mureu.
Yeah, thank you, Debarl. I think for me, if you look at this whole problem holistically, we must look at two people who are guilty. The one who evades tax and the one who misuses tax. And the moment we start addressing those two as culprits, then we will be dealing a blow to this whole process. If you look at right now what the DPP is doing, yes, it's following people who are entrepreneurs, who are running businesses, and yes, who may be culpable of tax evasion. But they are also employers, and there are people who are paying taxes within that framework, that institution, the institutions that they run. So yes, it's good to deal with that problem of people who have evaded tax, but it's also good to also deal with the problem of people who are misusing taxes. Because as Collins has alluded to, the fact that we are working, slogging so much, and I feel sorry for the business community because we are the biggest taxpayers. And every day we are there slogging and working for this nation. And after all that tax is collected, then somebody goes, I've just seen now here, somebody, Obado has splashed a lot of money in Mombasa with MCAs. This is taxpayers' money, for heaven's sake. And Governor Obado cannot be walking around just splashing money. And now here they are saying that they need more money. But have they proved that they are responsibly using what they already have? If you're taking your MCAs for a nice treat to Mombasa with the taxpayers' money, for heaven's sake, you ought also to be in the same place where all these other tax evaders are. Now, if you look at, again, going back to Collins, and I want to agree with you, Collins. Now, I don't know, this morning we are going to agree on a number of issues.
That's nice.
Because I think due process must be followed, so that we don't lose the case halfway down. If you rush to pick somebody whose premise is known. I think there's a process that must be followed, and yes, if they are found guilty, there is a more decent way, if I want to say it, put it this way, because if you look at Keroche, the establishment, and the people who are beneficiaries of that business, they cannot just be left destitute. So I think it's a question of saying you might lose everything, even the little that has been trickling in from that institution, if you unravel it too much. So due process, and I think a conversation with Tabitha or even Humphrey, a conversation of telling them this is what you have, and give them, a system of how to repay back what you claim, or once you have agreed, try and arbitrate the matter before you splash it, because this is also sending the wrong signals, Debarl, to investors.
Yes.
Right now, we have been going around looking for investors, asking them to come and invest in Kenya. Now, if eventually you find that the due process is not followed and that these guys, much as they have been splashed in the headlines, they are actually not guilty, what happened? Have we rushed too fast? So for me, I think due process is very important.
But I think we are missing something about the due process. We are not saying it should not be followed.
Could we hear from Stanley, then we come to you? The due process. Stanley.
It should be followed, but time it takes.
Yeah, but that's a nice statement from... Thank you very much for saying it should be followed.
No, just denied is just denied is what? Just denied.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
Stanley.
think, from my own personal view, I believe that there are better ways of dealing with matters of collection of tax. And when you're dealing with such, it should not be so abrasive so as to stifle business.
Yeah.
And the moment it appears that you are a suspect in a tax, in a tax or allegations of a tax fraud,
Yes.
one thing is that you realize that every other person who deals with you, from your creditors, the bank, other partners, suppliers, and all that, they become jittery, and the next thing is that they'll want to maybe go slow when they're dealing with you. The effect of that is that you realize that what it is that you're trying to resolve, the ripple effect affects a much wider spectrum of people that actually is, the effects are even more adverse to the economy as to what you're trying to look at. I'm one person who believes that matters of tax actually should not be criminalized. It has been in the news about the tussle between Keroche and KRA.
Yes.
The matters have gone to court, even to the Court of Appeal, and that means there are two sides to that particular story. But the moment you pull out the criminal angle and then you start enforcing it in the manner in which the DCI and the DPP are doing, I think it smacks on a lot of unfairness in that respect. The other thing I know is that it is clear that KRA is having a lot of pressure when it comes to tax collection. And in fact, if you can look at page 12 of the Business Daily, they're even blaming agriculture or farming as the reason why they are having the shortfall.
I saw that and I laughed.
And actually, that is a bit...
No, you can actually blame anyone.
Yeah, for me, actually, I'm looking at it from a position that this is basically systemic failure, and every other person is trying to look for a scapegoat to blame. But even more so is that if you find that there's a dispute somewhere, then they're actually going so all out so that they can be able to show to the world that they are doing something about that particular shortfall. So, in a nutshell, I think there is a better way of handling this particular dispute between KRA and Keroche and other such businesses. Yeah.
Right,
And
thank you.
And the message that goes out there must be one that doesn't scare future prospective investors.
All right. So I want to draw your attention back to what was on the front page also of the People Daily on Monday, how KRA top brass stole tax billions. And they fiddled with figures and arrest taxation records in a well-crafted scheme that saw them pocket hefty amounts of public money. And you have the revenue collection trends, of course, since 2014 up to 2018, 2019, given there as well. So maybe we can hark back to where we began. We saw some of the KRA officials arraigned in court. These are the top brass as well who are actually targeted. So what sort of treatment also should they be given as well? Since we are actually so hard on the tax evaders, what about the people who are colluding within KRA?
I'm not sure why JB dropped this thing of the... You remember the lad commission? He pulled out. I don't know why he pulled out. Jiraine.
Oh yeah, so he was yeah to be.
What are you trying to say?
Are you in a way insinuating something about Jiraine and the Lands Commission
There's a big word
chairmanship?
The big word at the beginning with the letter V. That is always ahead of you when you're going for those positions. Things might be
The
seen.
scrutiny.
Yeah, the scrutiny, yeah. But I think this is great. The fact that really a lot of our tax laws is systemic. It isn't that people refuse to pay. It's systemic.
No.
People
Absolutely.
are colluding within the system.
Absolutely.
And it's not just the business taxes and so forth and so on. Talk about imports. You talk about almost any activity that the revenue authority is involved in. There's a lot of collusion right now. And I had a friend the other day who just called me up. He was distraught. They had actually done everything correct, bringing in a box of material. Right? They had done the pre-shipment inspection, everything.
So annoying.
So that effectively, by having done all that, and scrutinize the documents, they should have actually qualified for what is called the green channel, whereby effectively everything comes in straight and comes out. And some, I don't know what to use the four-letter word, but somebody in KRA, right, sat there and brazenly tells them that, there is a problem here, and we can't tell you unless, right, and leave it there. That is a senior official, not a sort of smoker, but a senior official within the Revenue Authority who is saying that there has to be a discussion around something. Right? So this guy called me and says, what do we do? We are investors in this country. We've done everything right. And here you are, your own country is trying to bring us down. So I think it is that agency needs to be streamlined, really stripped open, and all the people who are currently rotten eggs in that place taken out. Because if that works and we have a properly operating KRA, then we'll be fine. And they have IT systems, iTax, what have you, all the rest of it. Yes. All those things are there. And that is supposed to make efficiency within that area. But what is happening? Despite all that, some guy in KRA refuses to press a button.
Yes.
So the corruption has moved from, from signature to basically pressing a button on the computer. That's where it's gone to. So if I won't press that button until you meet me and give me the money.
And I think Patrick's right. It's you look at the young people, and I feel young people who are in business. They tell you we are doing things genuinely. I'm bringing things, but I'm being taxed things they don't understand.
Yeah.
And I think, Patrick, something perhaps you should have pointed out. We have seen the metamorphosis that institution has gone through. If you look at that board which was there before,
yeah,
there were issues. And I think it's time Ambassador Muthaura got the whip going. As a board has a responsibility. And you bring a very good point. And I think because here you have the staff, then you hear the taxpayers. We tend, and Murray, you're right, we tend to go so hard on the taxpayers.
Yes, and leave it.
Not that I defend people don't pay tax because we should. Yeah. And with the staff here, there's nothing we're doing about it. But I think to me, the way you communicate, Wakili, you are spot on. The way you communicate about those issues and the process is not a question of putting the SMSs or WhatsApp. Talk with the person, tell there is the issues, and I'm sure you can have a compromise. But I think for the staff, we need to come hard on them.
Yes, absolutely.
Because there's no way you can be colluding there.
Let me just weigh in on this, Debarl.
Yes, please.
And yesterday I spent the whole day just running around trying to help a client of mine who has applied, who is about to invest $2 billion in this country. He's putting up a special economic zone, which is embedded in our constitution. The terms of setting up a special economic zone are known. All right? You enjoy your tax holidays, you enjoy your rebates, you enjoy all this duty-free status as you prepare to set up these manufacturing units. Now, somebody, as Patrick has said, somebody in KRA is looking at the law very selectively to look at how they can make this fail. And I have gone up to the highest office. And I'm hoping that Ambassador Muthaura and his team are now going to realize that not only are they failing the local investor who has taken the initiative to bring these investors of $2 billion and creating 40,000 jobs directly and 150,000 jobs indirectly. Now, if we are serious about this country, then we must midwife that process and make sure it is flawless so that we create these jobs. Now, this man has been in and out of Kenya Revenue Authority since February when he launched, when he launched his application. Yet, if you look at our so-called ease of doing business, we have moved from number 139 to number 61, as it is now. But realistically, on the ground, we're moving backwards. And you're looking at that not just as a delay in executing the project, but also an additional cost to the cost of doing business. So I said, in one of these sessions, I said, we must now bring a good parallel between the ease of doing business and the cost of doing business, because all these delays from Kenya Revenue Authority actually add up to a cost. And
we need to bring Wawero back.
Finally, what there is actually is the investor then looks at his capital and says, if this capital is not required in Kenya, I'll take it to Uganda or Ethiopia or anywhere else. Capital is a coward. It will not sit where it feels very uncomfortable.
Right. No. Okay. Actually, could we just take a short break, Patrick, then we circle back with you and Colin Sodote. But of course, also when we come back, we need to look at some of the words. If we have Tabitha, who has been, of course, given so many awards before. We have the Africa Awards for Entrepreneurship that she got in 2015, Transformational Business Award, and even right now, she's tapped to be the nominee. She's actually the nominee, one of the nominees of the 47th International Emmy Awards Gala that is scheduled for 29th of November in New York. In light of all these allegations, what does it portend? You're talking about due diligence. Do we normally do our due diligence when also we are awarding these people as well? Right, we also answer that on the other side of the break.
wanajitambua, yani wale wanajiamini.
Yani someone took their sweet time and thought about us.
Rembo TV, simply beautiful.
Now you can get your Uber ride with a phone call. Call 0800 722 000 to ride.
Msichana alipewa mimba na baba yake. Fika Rongo wakamuua ili wafiche evidence.
Told me that Ken is the one who has impregnated her.
Who is Ken to you?
It's my son to my brother.
Kwenye huo kazi wangu alinirape, nikaenda nikaambia wazazi wangu.
There are mothers who really cover cases of incest within their household.
Children are getting pregnant under your own roof.
Sikupenda kwetu tupewe mimba. Ni ngumu kwa sababu asubuhi naamka mapema.
The enemy is all over.
Si kama wasichana, enough is enough.
Tell me more about my biological mom.
She was a housekeeper. She worked for your parents.
I'm glad she didn't have an abortion.
She would never have done something like that. So how's Scarlett? Have y'all set that wedding date yet?
Not yet. But when we do, you'll be the first one to know.
Before we get married, I really want to finish the plans for the church. It's the least I can do for God.
Yeah. I just saw a gun.
Are you okay? I'm okay.
Why did you wait so long to come to the hospital?
I didn't feel too sick.
September 2019 and January 2020 intakes are ongoing. Call us today on 0724 256 162 or 0725 751 878. Kenya Methodist University. The future is here.
I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere.
I lied about a sweet. That I didn't see it, but I saw it. And then I took it and then I ate. Katibu kata wakata. Katibu kata wakata.
That was
so easy to make, right?
So easy, and we did it
Together.
Super Loaf, slices of life.
Your eyes have been on the prize, left no stone unturned. Your focus has made you an industry leader, and now it is time to celebrate you. Nominate yourself or someone you know at Top 40 Under 40 Women 2019 at top40.bdafrica.com. Nomination runs from 26 July till 24th August 2019. Business Daily. More possibilities.
Welcome back. You're watching In the Market here on AML Live. We continue with the conversation, and we're looking at the tax justice here in the country, where we have this damning report from the World Bank that Kenyans are not getting value for their tax. And I'm holding court this morning with Patrick Obath, who's the Vice Chair of KEPSA Foundation, also the Chair of Board of Directors of the Standard Chartered Bank. We have also with us Collins Odote, who is a columnist with the Business Daily, also a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. And we have with us as well Stanley Manduku, who is an oil and gas legal expert. We do have with us as well James Mureo, who is a board member of Business Registration Services, the Chairman, Human Resource and Finance Committee, Office of the Attorney General and Department of Justice. We have with us also the Chair of Kenya School of Government and also a lecturer at the University of Nairobi School of Business. This is Dr. Gituro Wanaina. Before we took a short break, we said we'll circle back with you, Patrick, and Collins Odote. And I'd also teased out the issue of awarding some of the CEOs that we have. Humphrey Kariuki was actually also given the highest taxpayer award by the KRA. Now we can see still he's in dogs as far as also tax evasion is concerned. Tabitha is also touted to be one of the nominees for this 47th International Emmy Awards Gala that is scheduled for November at the 29th at New York. That will be 29th of November this year. So what does these revelations about tax evasion really portend for them? Do we do due diligence? And how come KRA will give you an award here and come another day and say, no, you're evading tax?
No, my view, first of all, let me just respond to something that James talked about earlier on.
Please.
He mentioned the word Ethiopia, and that basically, normally, it's not supposed to be a red flag because you're competing with us. But for me, it immediately gave me a green flag. When you go to invest in Ethiopia, and you have an appointment with government officials, you are met at the airport by the minister's car.
Absolutely.
Not that you have to find your way into the country through all those hurdles and everything else, and then you come to the office of the minister, say for finance or for industry, and he's been called away by the president, and he can't see you for 3 days because there are some important issues. When that person sends their car, effectively they give you their time 100%, and you could go into his office and leave at the end of that day with your solutions straight away. Whereas in this country, the same people come and they've made appointments 6 months in advance. And the day they arrive, they are not seen. They are seen, some of them even leave and go back because they're not seen in that time. We need to have a complete mental shift in this country if you're going to start attracting investors. And some of the issues around KRA, and you're talking about all these awards, now let's go back to that. How do you award somebody and then arrest them later? Going back to what Colin said, systemic issues we have in this country. If somebody, if you just look purely at the statistics for that year, and Keroche or Kariuki has basically given you the highest tax, that is a fact. Because that year it is computed that that is the person who has given you the highest amount of tax, right? But if then you go ahead and you begin to look at the systems that determined the tax and how they are being, how they've been set up, and you find there's a problem, there is a problem. Right? Absolutely. There's a problem. And this is where now you talk about KRA. How do their systems work? how do they, like, if you go on regular audits, and I sit on the boards of several companies, KRA comes regularly to those companies and do audits. And I'm sure with large taxpayers like that, they must regularly be audited. Because I've been in companies that have been awarded and we have been had audits regularly. So it means that KRA itself probably doesn't know what the front end is doing from what the back end is doing.
Absolutely.
It doesn't, right? Is it they don't know, or someone is gaming the system altogether?
There's two ways. One is that they don't know, and the second one is that people are actually trying to manipulate that. And I'm just being purely speculative. This case that is happening now, it could be that somebody is actually looking to extract value. Somebody within the system. And when they couldn't extract value, they hit you.
Yes.
Right? And that's the farcical side of me, the cynical side of me, in terms of looking at this kind of thing. Because I don't believe that an organization that is this big can make such a huge mistake. Right? And you have to be a damn clever person to allow, to be able to go around this system that has been developed very well. There's IT solutions, they've got all sorts of fraud prevention officers, you name it, the works. They've got a huge audit and fraud prevention unit. And if they can't get these guys in the bud, there's something wrong in that place.
Right.
So I have no problems with those guys going for their awards because they've been awarded by the Revenue Authority themselves based on their data. But if their system is not detecting everything else, then let's go and give KRA an award that is at the bottom end of systems.
What about international?
You're right.
International awards to Tabitha, let's say from Collins?
Debarl, a colleague of mine is undertaking a project together with some colleagues from Ethiopia and Uganda. They got some equipment to try and monitor air pollution. That equipment sat at the import place for 3 months because they couldn't be able to clear it. As a consequence, they paid a lot of demurrage charges. Eventually, what was outstanding is something that took 15 minutes to deal with after he had complained and walked up and down. So he eventually, and that's an ordinary Kenyan. The number of Kenyans who suffer because of that, for me, are extremely high. What does that tell us? It tells us that all these things we're discussing, unless we fix, the word that is you who used, unless we fix the systemic issues, we're going nowhere. People are discussing during off-break that if you look at Chicken Gate, for example, the guys who are abroad were tried, convicted, and they're about to finish serving their
sentence. Somebody has
finished.
Somebody has another 3 years, yeah?
Here, we're still talking about allegations. Why? Because we are interested in sensationalization and not in addressing systemic issues. Until we do so, all these things will continue being mirage. Several years ago, we lied to ourselves that our only problem was a problem of having manual systems. So let's then have technology. We put technology at lands. We put technology at where Mureo is in terms of registration of businesses. We put technology. Even those changes, you can still see the complaints. I've been being called for the last 6 months to go and sign some things manually. You go sign after, when you're told go upload, then they say, no, go back and sign. So you go to iTax, we're still having the concerns. Because, Debarl, technology enhances efficiency. It does not deal with our values. And I think until we deal with our values, these problems will continue arising. And look at the headline you give us on the Monday. When you are accusing somebody of having committed some fraud, the question is, who did the assessment? The assessment must have been done by a public officer. We must then make the assumption that these public officers are focusing on what Chapter 7 says. They're focusing on serving the people. What happens when public officers at all levels realize that the better thing to do is to serve their private interest? Then you aren't sure when somebody wakes up and tells you, by the way, you have been jailed. You're not sure that you are jailed because you are innocent or you are jailed because you are guilty. When somebody tells you that I'm charging you for a traffic offense, you're not sure you're being charged because you're overspeeding or you're being charged because you refuse to bribe. And until the system works, Debarl, we will be having very many concerns. Go to the awards. I think I agree with Patrick. If the award is on the basis that you are the highest taxpayer, you can't quarrel with that. You are the highest. Whether that highest was the maximum you should pay or not, you are still the highest. But if the award was in terms of you are something different, then we'll be having the debate. Talk about highest, for example. You know, sometimes when you talk about the highest taxpayer, we're looking at volumes.
Not compliance.
Exactly. My mother in the village who may be a primary school teacher, in terms of the levels of compliance, he might be at 100%, she might be at 100%, yet I am at 20%. But my volume is larger than hers. So I think what we must also start asking ourselves is, what exactly are we measuring and how objective is it? You know, in several years ago, actually just a few years ago, there was even huge concerns, even about the presidential awards.
Yes.
The time we gave many people, including Githeriman, there was huge concern. So I think the question is not whether the person got the award. The question is, what are our parameters for assessing that award? Are we giving awards for the right parameters? And I think the right parameters must start being parameters that help us address systemic issues, not sensational issues.
But as a beneficiary, you have opportunity to say no.
That's true.
I can say there, no, I'm not taking it. I don't deserve it.
That's true.
Yeah. But I think
in this country.
Yes, I had a friend
that happening in this country.
Yeah, I'm telling you,
where people don't want to resign, they rather die.
A friend who got a full professorship, he knows, because he's a very intelligent man, he knows he didn't meet the qualification, and he got it. And he want to spill the beans, we will. How do you go there, Debarl? You know you have not fulfilled A, B, C, D, and you get this and you say, okay. That even self-assessment is important in my view.
That's where we come back to the values.
Exactly.
Values. What is it that makes
he got a full professorship, he knows he didn't deserve it. And he goes telling people I'm a full professor.
And that's where the systemic issues come in. Because the systemic issues must be such that, one, we don't have a system that even contemplates giving awards to people who don't deserve it. But number two, that we have values where if the system makes that mistake, the individual will say, no, thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from Manduku. We'll come to you, Breo. Manduku?
Yeah, in fact, when I'm looking at the whole of this issue, having been given the award of the highest taxpayer, and then you're evading 41 billion, I'm just wondering, how much money is this person?
Just stick to your money.
Not in your lifetime.
And that is why, and then when you look at the newspaper here, then you hear Tabitha saying that it has not been informed. The little investigative process that I know, I was one some times ago, is that if there's a suspect, you normally go and take a statement from him or her, obviously a charge and caution statement, and you hear what it is. So when you realize, I don't know whether it's true, whatever she's saying, that she woke up in the morning or she came in the evening, she found that she's just being arrested, then that tells you something. What does it tell you? Somebody somewhere sat either at KRA, and then he came up with the figures, without even going through any other process, decided to slam these particular figures, did their investigations. They did not even want to hear an input from the suspect. And then all of a sudden, a very good file was prepared. It was taken to the DPP. DPP looked at it and they decided, okay, proceed and arrest. Why am I saying this? The reason why things happen now, and we have been talking about the problems that you're having with our value system, is that you may realize that there must have been something that went wrong somewhere. Somebody may have made it very difficult, and even somebody may have even wanted to extract or to rent seek from that. And the moment someone is a bit firm, then you realize that, wow, they say, oh, I have got an opportunity here to also flex my muscle. And that is the problem that you're having. I don't know if it's a culture problem, it's a value problem. And unfortunately now, the moment someone has decided that is how it's going to go, you realize that the person who suffers is the person who may not have had that particular opportunity to put his or her point across. And what does that mean now? I think we need to have a look at the entire system. Like now, the person who determines how much tax is due and owing is the KRA. The accuser is the KRA. Where does that leave us? And the problem we are having now is that we are having organizations, authorities, and individuals who are now abusing power. This is basically a situation of abuse of power. Because the law allows you to do X, Y, Z, there's a process and there's a procedure. You decide to circumvent it, either because the person has not played ball, or basically either because you are ignorant, or you just, you just want to flex, yeah? Then that amounts to abuse of power. And I think it's high time now Kenyans come up and then they start saying that all those people who are being given certain responsibilities, either by the constitution or by the law or by anything, yeah? They should be accountable on how they are using or utilizing their power.
Thank you. James Breo.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I agree with that. I think this morning, this tax issue is a big thing. But I think for us, Debarl, we must go back to the basics. We must get back to the basics. And the basics are around the values that we carry around with us. If you look at, and I think Collins, today we are speaking the same language. You talked about the awards that we give people. And you have seen people who actually should be rotting in jail are being given EGH, entitled to great honor, elders of the Golden Heart, whatever it is. This person, the truth be told, belongs to Bukoy Committee prisons, but they sanitize their position in society by receiving these awards. They even fix these awards so that when they are recognized, and I wouldn't put it beyond some of the people who are now being brought to the fore to have bought their way into getting awards. There's nothing, I mean, if it's a corrupt system, it's a failed system, it is open to any kind of abuse. So I realize now I have a big tax problem. So how do I sort this out? Influence the tax awardees, awarders, the people who are awarding these positions to award you, so that you sort of camouflage yourself as a taxpayer and hope that this can be wished away. It is one possibility, because again, we're back to the same problem, systemic failures that continue to dog us.
Thank you.
Now, if you look at, let me just say this, there are always two sides to this story. What Tabitha or what Humphrey Karaoke is saying versus what the DPP is saying. And usually, when you see a sensational headline like this, you're actually telling the people to actually crucify this person, stone him, do everything, because we are supposed to believe that the DPP is the right authority and they have carried out due diligence. But we are also aware that some of the failures in prosecuting certain cases are because the prosecutors themselves are compromised. So they bring in a shoddy case that will not stand the test of time, and thereby allowing a real culprit to escape because you have done a shoddy job because you've been compromised. And so we must now break down this whole system to exactly what we want to, what is the result we want to achieve, and how do we want to achieve these results. Right. And one of the things is really just changing our value propositions and just getting the right value.
Right. Let's bring it to a close first of all, because I think you mentioned the issue of the marriage, the containers that were still stalling for the longest time because of clearance issue. And I wondered still, we are streamlining the single window system that was meant to make sure that such cases of demurrage costs which are accumulating are not there at all. The integration even of the KRA, I think, was it the Simba system?
Yeah, the new system, actually.
Yeah, of tracking was meant to be integrated into the single window system. There has been also this toing and froing around it as well, because single window system was meant to make sure that there is ease of course, streamlining, the containers along the ports as well. But this has not worked out. Because you see what Uhuru did actually here at IDC as well, just recently. Yes, why should we be having and investing so much with the single window system with the Kentred, and it's still we have such issues of backlog that
because
Debarl,
we are reforming our hardware and not software.
Still values what he's talking about.
When we reform the hardware, yes, you will make it more efficient, but the software is still interested in gaming the system.
Yes.
So they will still game that technology system. That's the bottom line, nothing else. So you will now say, let's have this technology base so that we can do this thing in 5 minutes. The person in charge says, okay, so if it's supposed to be done in 5 minutes, what do I need to do to still extract my pound of flesh? Because I must still extract my pound of flesh. So officially, we'll be talking about this system working well, and officially you will then find out either the system is down, the system still requires a human being to do something, that human being just refuses to do. So eventually, you still end up at the same place. So I think we need to realize as we move forward that our efforts at trying to adopt technology must be accompanied by reforming of the value system. Because if we don't do so, we'll be spending a lot of money, which on the face of it look efficient, but in reality, it just makes our life more difficult.
Right. I think what you want to do is use, the countries of this world are only not working because there are certain people who are allowed to intervene. If you actually set the algorithms in the system to make decisions, so that there is no intervention, I can't go and have to press that button as an individual, a human being. But all the reasons why decisions can be made are put in there, and if something cannot pass, you're told it can't pass because of X. Then the fewer the people who have to make decisions on a system, the better. Unfortunately, the Kentrade has been put in, and you have almost 30 odd agencies that all have to input their decisions into that place. That is a problem.
It's a problem?
Those, yeah. I mean, the other day they're talking about KEFIS having to sort of approve fertilizer to come into Kenya. KEFIS has no business approving fertilizer.
Absolutely.
They have a business approving maize. But fertilizer should be KEBS or the government chemist or somebody who understands those things. Yes. But that is where the Kentrade system, the design is great, but it's just that the people, there's too many people who have to make decisions on that system, and each one of them has got a finger waiting for money.
All right.
And the truth is, Debarl, and I must bring this in, this system, the Kentrade system, I was part of the system, part of the people who actually set it up.
Oh.
And I know for a fact that we borrowed a lot from Singapore.
Yeah.
Now, if we borrowed that system from Singapore, and Singapore is working, what makes our system not work? And you're right, as you rightly said, it's the pressing of this button. It's being able to trace the problem back to who caused it.
Exactly.
There is a system in there, inbuilt. But what there is there are so many overrides in the system that actually I can press this button and blame it on Stanley.
Minimize people
so,
contact.
So there are so many people who contaminate the system, as it were.
Right.
But really,
when did you allow that?
if you look at Singapore, the Singapore system works. We followed that country, the single window, with the port charter that was signed by so many people in that space. Very many signatories to that port charter, which was meant to make
not even in Singapore, it's working next door.
Yeah. So,
there are in 10 countries, it's working wonder.
The truth is, again, we're back to systemic failure and our value proposition. Why am I sitting behind this desk to cause frustration to these people, yet I'm paid a salary to do what I'm supposed to do?
Thank you, thank you. Let's leave it at that and move on now, because I know also Patrick Obathi is about to go. And if you may just indulge me, at least we go to the next story so that we can get also your input on this, because I think this is pivotal. This is really right up your alley as well. And we know right now that the British oil explorer Tullow Oil has set 2024, I should say, as the earliest date Kenya can expect to start reaping gains from the Turkana oil. Tuesday's announcement has dampened hopes for economic boost that was expected to start in 2022. The petroleum firm said it will take at least 4 years to reach the commercial production stage, when Kenya is expected to start earning about 150 billion shillings from crude oil exports every year. Kenya is yet to sign with Tullow Oil and its partners the critical final investment decision, without which financiers cannot commit to fund drilling, pipeline and other infrastructure projects required to process drilling. The firm will continue with its non-commercial early oil pilot scheme in the meantime to gather market and production data ahead of the large-scale production. There has been minimal also disclosure on the dealings between Tullow Oil and the Kenyan government, or the Kenyan government, with the British oil giant, even declining to reveal who was buying the crude oil before the government announced the buyers last week. A coalition of 16 civil society organizations under the Kenya Civil Society Platform on Oil and Gas, which has been pushing for the disclosure of the contracts, has repeatedly accused the government of violating the constitution and breeding mistrust by concealing details of the oil project agreements. So let's just pick your brains, Patrick, on this as well. The commercial viability of this project. Are we having pie in the sky optimism as it is?
No, the project is commercially viable for what it is. But it's a small project. It is not going to make Kenya a sort of a big oil exporter. We will export oil, yes, but be the first in this African region.
Yes.
But we are not going to be a rich nation as a result of that oil. That is for certain. And the issues about the delays that are coming into this, if you look at again, back to our values as a country and so forth, when the first early oil export trucks were leaving Turkana, what happened? They were stopped by the local people there. Not because of oil, but because of another problem they had. And they were seeing oil, and the oil is the easiest thing to go and stop.
Yes.
Because it will get you attention. Now, if you look at what happened, and this is really the problem that any investor in natural resources in this country has, we have been so indoctrinated and sort of agitated to think that the minute resources come, we are in heaven. We've got everything in this country. Yet, one forgets that the journey that companies like Talo, Tiomin, base titanium in Mombasa, in mining and so forth, in Kwale, those companies spent a lot of money in terms of ensuring that you could actually extract that natural resource from the ground. And the problem is that we have been telling our people that the minute the resources are there, we're in heaven. The government's responsibility is to make sure that the investor has a clean sailing. The agreements between the government and the investor prior to, I'm going back to the story you just sold, prior to the new Petroleum Act, the government had control of information coming out. So the investor, like Talo, cannot come and announce something unless the government has agreed. Our constitution that
so that is within the Petroleum Act as it is right now.
Before
the
contracts that were signed, that is exactly what happened, and those are the contracts that obtained up to now. The production sharing agreements that were signed prior to the constitution with most of the oil companies are still the ones that are operating now, and those basically clamp down on the company. The government has control and say of everything else. But in some instances, what you're seeing is that the government should also be dealing with the communities and the county governments and everything else to ensure that all the issues that come through have been cleared, and then the investor can continue. But now what you're seeing is that it's hands off, and the person who is on the ground, which is the investor, is the one who's always being hammered to get the government to come to the table, I think the conversation needs to change in the country. And I can see why we are going to 2024, and it may be 2026, and even later. I think it was one of the shows here in 2016, when originally the first oil export was supposed to be this year, 2019.
Yes.
And at that point I said, guys, not before 2025.
They didn't listen to you.
No, it's not about listening to me. It's just reading the tea leaves on the ground and everything else. Correct. And just understanding that we are going on a very, very tricky journey. And the societal expectations are the big unknown. The commercial decisions are very straightforward, right? And the investor now knows exactly he needs his final investment decision, but that is premised on a lot of things having been ticked off. And the ticking of those things is basically resting with the government of Kenya. So they're ready, and they've been ready, I think, for at least a year and a half. But it's a question of ticking off all the different things that need to be done and in place before the final investment decision is made. And that investment decision is about going to get large amounts of money from other people. It's an investor coming from outside and putting money into this particular place and saying, I have certainty that once I put my money in, there's going to be no disruption. And this is big money.
Yes.
So until those things are there, we are not going to see somebody signing and saying, right, we can now invest. Commercially, it is a good project. And it will actually pay. And the amount of money you're talking about, that the return to the country will be there, right? But we need to have very, very clear policy certainty in this country for those kind of monies to be put in. And the small investors are having problems. What about guys of that nature? Right? They will have serious problems, but they are willing to wait because the resource is sitting there, it's not going anywhere. And we as a country need that resource to come out so we can make a bit of money out of it. So there's going to be a cat and mouse game. But until all the preconditions have been met by us as a country, the investor is not really going to move.
So we're stuck up with, with the sort of the old act that is still binding with Talo and the government.
The old contracts, which were signed under the old act.
Old acts, isn't
Yes.
it? So we have the new one, which we have the non-disclosure agreement, but we are stuck with the old.
All those ones are there in the current Petroleum Act. They're all there. They require all those things to happen. But it's the government. If the government wishes, because they're the ones, if they wish to make that information public, they can do so.
They can do so.
But the problem is, the minute they do that and make the information public, the public itself is going to have a different perception. So they're caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, but the Access to Information Act, where does it come into play? Briefly, let's hear from Collins. We'll come to you.
I was going to say I agree with Patrick until he said if the government wishes. Because I think this problem of tallow and oil in Turkana has been with us since 2012 when we discovered oil. The one of titanium has been with us since 2002 when we discovered titanium, the one of Tayomi. And I think Article 35 of the Constitution, Debarl, is not a government wish. It is a Kenyan expectation, the Kenyan expectation of access to information. And I've been in meetings as part of this process with government where Talo makes that same point. Talo makes the point that, you know, as we have no problem with the disclosure, this information is the government. The government can just go ahead and disclose. I have had government say, we will disclose, including the former Minister for Energy, including the former President, saying we'll even have a portal. This is 2019, it's not been disclosed. Can you ask yourself, Debarl, if all you require is to disclose, why is the disclosure not taking place?
I can tell you.
It is not taking place.
I can tell you, it is pregnant space
Murray
for
will
corruption.
tell you. And you see, exactly. And that is at the heart of the problem. So we can argue about who will not benefit, who will benefit. The reality is that this non-disclosure is benefiting people. And the people it is not benefiting are two. It is not benefiting the citizens of the Republic of Kenya at all. It is not benefiting the Republic of Kenya at all. So we can discuss everything else, but when we have a process where the reality is that whatever we are doing is not benefiting the people and not benefiting the country, then we are living a lie. And we are living a lie because private individuals who are occupying public spaces are trying to circumvent the process. There is nothing, Debarl. Our constitution then says that anything that was there before 2010 is supposed to align with the letter and spirit of the constitution. The requirement for disclosure is an imperative, and it must be disclosed. If you look at these concerns, at the end of the day, a lot of people are left to speculate, including even the county government itself. The reason why citizens will stop the early oil is for a legitimate reason. They've had the expectation that life will be better. Whether falsely or not is a different issue. Now, all of a sudden, they wake up and they're seeing trucks leaving. To some of them, they even think, and I've been to Turkana, and they even think that, there's a time that I think a plane had just landed to bring in equipment. These guys thought that the plane had come to take early oil back to Nairobi. And they're like, but you can't leave this before we are given, because they don't know what is in, they don't know how much is involved, they don't know what we're going to get. Yet the solution is a very simple process. The solution would be, why don't we put all facts on the table? If today we are debating whether it is 2024 and not 2022 and not 2026. If you ask anybody in Turkana, if you ask the bulk of the people in Nairobi, except those with insider knowledge, you will not know the reality of what's happening. So what are we left to do? Speculate. One of the other things that is contentious is going to be, the reality is that the company put in a lot of money in terms of investment. The second reality is, if you ask today, how much have they put in terms of investment? You will not get one unanimous figure across the entire country.
All right.
That's been the debate, that's been the contestation with Uganda. So I think solving that is at the heart. And for me, it's a very easy thing. I don't think that the requirements of the previous law can detract us from achieving the imperatives of Article 35 of the Constitution.
Stanley, you're heavily involved also in the crafting these particular acts as it is right now. And let's pick up your brains on this. You're the energy law expert on this.
Yeah, okay. There is one thing I have to say is that prior to the promulgation of the Constitution, there were a number of production sharing contracts that were signed. And basically, these production sharing contracts were based in the old Petroleum Act. And what happened is that when the Constitution came in and there was the requirement for people to align, then the ministry at that time took the lead and formed a committee or a task force to review several laws so that they can be able to align them with the Constitution. One of the laws that was supposed to have been reviewed is the Petroleum Act, which was actually reviewed, and we have got a new act, Petroleum Act 2019. Now, one of the things that I have to say is that in the Petroleum Act 2019, it has what we call a saving clause, a transitional clause which is a saving clause. And one of the things that have been saved is all the contracts and all the agreements that had been signed prior to the enactment of the law. So as we speak, the production sharing contract that Tulo signed with government at that time has been saved by operation of law through the saving clause of the Petroleum Act. One, when you look at the PSC, when you look at the production sharing contract, which now we are calling them petroleum agreements in the new law, you realize that it's a heavily technical document. And it explains from the aspect of prospecting all the way to the discovery, all the way to production and to development, up to the point of releasing the oil at the delivery point to, for sale. Now, that particular, there's a procedure. There's a procedure. I think in 2011, that is the time commerciality was established and an announcement to that effect was made. And then Tulo went to the ground, now they started the process of developing. Now, the moment they have been developing, when you look at the revenue share, we have got two types of oil. The oil has been split into two. We have got the cost oil and we have got the profit oil. Now, the cost oil is a portion or a share of the revenues that will arise from the sale of petroleum that will go towards meeting the cost of exploration, production, and development. And that is a cost that is ordinarily borne by the investor, in this case, Tulo. And it is not a small cost. And the interesting bit is that in the event that maybe they did all that and they hit a dry well, or commerciality was not established, then obviously that capital sinks. It is actually risk capital that they put in. And in the event that commerciality is established, then they have got the first right to recover. They recover their cost first, and whatever remains is what is being shared. Now, when you see 2024, there are other things that will arise. First of all, you know, it may not be commercially viable to transport oil using trucks. So we may need a pipeline. There were processes and procedures of the development of the pipeline, but due to geopolitical issues, with Uganda pulling out and the pipeline route changing and all that, there are all these concerns. So that means even beyond the text of the agreement, there are other issues that have arisen that will make it impossible for Kenyans to start reaping the benefits of this oil within the time that was anticipated in the...
But the Director General of ERC will not really agree with you as it is right now, because he thinks it's transporting oil via trucks is cheaper than pipeline, according to he appeared yesterday. And I think I saw that in today's...
You know, let's
clarify that.
Let's clarify that.
Yeah.
You see, we have got two types of pipelines.
This is on page,
we have got pipeline that transports white petroleum oil, which is managed by Kenya Pipeline Company.
That is processed.
That is the one whereby there was a new pipeline that was built at the cost of 48 billion. And you can see what basically the EPRA director is saying is that the tariff that has developed is much higher when you translate it compared to the cost of tracking this particular oil. That is different. But when you're talking about the crude, we need to have a crude oil pipeline that needs to be developed, because the crude cannot use the same pipeline with the oil. So what ERC is talking about is running around the cost of constructing that particular pipeline and the tariff that the oil marketing companies will have to spend.
Amortize that and see how the years.
Yeah, so he is right. He is right in respect to the line 5 that was built and the costs that are there. So to that extent, he's right. But now, when we are talking about the crude oil pipeline, that is the other type of the pipeline. The crude oil pipeline has to be developed. Initially, for it to be developed, all these financials had to be done. And the first pipeline, the first design, was to Lokichar and then to Hoima. But because of geopolitical issues, that pipeline changed. The Hoima oil, they decided to use Tanzania. It became, I think, cheaper. There are all these arguments that came around. Now, for us to have that particular oil transported to the point of delivery and for export, we'll need to put up the pipeline. Putting up the pipeline will require time. So the 2024 date is actually ambitious for me.
It's ambitious.
Is ambitious.
It's ambitious.
Chances are that we are likely to even to go to 2026 or even beyond.
So this is a mirage actually. So coming closer, but it will be.
So I think Kenyans should be able to manage the expectation as to what that will happen.
So what
on the issues of disclosure?
Yes, yeah. Oh, before we come to disclosure, let's hear from Muriel. Oh yeah, Patrick has to go.
Let me just respond to Stanley's point. The early oil and the cost of early oil is how many trucks a day. When you're doing 80,000 barrels a day, it is completely impractical to export 80,000 barrels a day by road, right? It's literally having a land train, and you're going to choke everything up. So the cost of doing it that way, at 70,000, 80,000 barrels a day, is just not on. So the pipeline is the only viable solution, or alternatively, you build a dedicated train line, right? So you've got a train which is 2 kilometers long, traveling up and down, or 3 or 4 of them going by per day. It's been done in, I think, in Russia. That's how they export heavy oil in Russia, because of winter and everything else. That's their best way of doing it. And they have trains that are kilometers long, and they're traveling on a dedicated line from the oil field to the export.
But that was the initial upset.
Yeah, and that is where you have not 750 whatever it is barrels. You've got about 10 times, 20 times that amount to make that project viable. So let's just accept that that is probably, that is a curved ball that guy is talking about. It's not really...
He was just in Parliament and he can talk anything he wants. No, seriously.
Allow me to release Patrick, but thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And maybe we need to look at Thursdays with board meetings. Should we enact it maybe in Parliament as an official day for board meetings, right?
I think we just need to say, if it is every second Thursday, I'll move board meetings away.
Every second Thursday, I will move board meetings
away. If we agree it's every second Thursday that we shall be meeting here, then I'll move my board meetings.
Thank you, Patrick. Right, thank you.
We'll deliver it.
Thank you. You'll deliver it, huh?
Yes,
because everywhere, every Thursday. We need to cancel it. There's a board meeting. Or maybe there's a meeting at State House. No, I'm just talking about it. I'm talking about many, also board members as well. Right. As you're going, we shall also be listening from Muriel as well. Your input. Thank you so much, Patrick. Right, Muriel.
Yeah, thank you very much. Me, I don't want to pretend I'm an authority in oil, as has been displayed by both Patrick and my brother Stanley here. But the truth is, practically speaking, I think the access to information and the management of the expectations of Mwananchi is very important. Because, in the absence of any information, or the truthful information for that matter, Mwananchi is saying, this is it. Now, here we come, we'll be sheikhs, we'll change our address style because we are all going to be oil sheikhs. That is the perception on the ground. The oil has been found. How much has been found? And again, today, Collins and I are speaking from the same side. He has said that, according to the Constitution, the Mwananchi is entitled to truthful, factual information real time, so that you manage their expectation. I am told, and I stand corrected by Wakil here, that the money will be made upstream. By the time you get downstream, you are taking crumbs. The cream is upstream, and the contracts are skewed so that it's from up there that the money will be made.
Yes.
By the Talos of this world, by everybody else. By the time we get to the petrol station and we are taking the crumbs, the cream is gone. I don't know how true that is. If you look at these agreements, they have a cost implication. There is a cost that these people are, the exploration companies are putting in, which costs must be recouped before we can even start talking of benefiting as a country. How much are these costs? Can we put numbers so that at the end of the day, we are saying it cost me 200 billion to extract, so I must recoup that, and thereafter then the country starts making a profit. And so if we don't manage this, then we end up asking ourselves a big question. Is this discovery of this oil a blessing or a curse to this country? If you are going to have the subjects in Turkana and other places where this oil has been found fighting over a product that they don't even know how much is there and how it will benefit them, then it becomes a curse. It can be a blessing if the whole process is properly managed. And finally, if you look at how we are managing even these investors, and again, I think it's Patrick who has said, the investors have been left to be sorting out all the geopolitical nonsense that goes on with politicians or county governments that have failed to deliver a certain service, and as a result of this, by blocking the road, we are causing them to pay attention to the real problem. Can we treat investors better than this? Can the government play its role? Because ultimately, the government is going to collect taxes, and this oil is going to be managed by people who will bring resources to the country, and the government manages these resources for this country. So can we treat them with respect?
Thank you. Thank you. Right, let's hear from Gituro on this.
No, I think my view is very different in terms of, I think one thing is to appreciate that oil, the future of oil is not as close as it used to be. And I think it's perhaps to think differently when you look at oil. I'm even looking one of the main consumers of oil, the motor industry. The technology is changing completely. We'll probably be using less. And I had a very good example. Venezuela has the highest deposits of oil in the world. And you can see why it is headed. But I think what is important is not to get this like a resource where we probably have made it. I think I like what Murray is saying, that you have neoclutes or something like that. But it also gives us, and this is a very sad story standing on the team, the incident we have had literally about 2 weeks ago and last week of Uganda and Tanzania, where the tankers roll over and people are all over and they are banned. It's something we probably give us a level of the kind of people we are talking about, how we look at oil. But I think what is important in my view, and Patrick before he went, we must have a very clear balancing act between the investor interest and the community lead Kenya's interest. That's very important because somebody has invested in this, not for 3 years or 5 years, and I think we need to do that. The question of transporting it by road, I think the gentleman who was talking to probably to the community has to look at the economics of scale.
Mr. Omeke.
Yes. If you look in the long run, it's very expensive investing in the pipeline, but in the long run it will be cheaper. And I think that's what we need to look at it. But I think to me, probably I will not put a penny in terms of oil in this country will have any significant impact in terms of our GDP. I will not.
Right, thank you.
Probably we have to give that information from the expectations of Kenyans.
Managing the expectations.
Okay, yes. Let's say from Collins then, of course, there was an issue also of you wanted to weigh in on disclosure of information as we're preparing also your headline thoughts this morning, Collins.
Debarl, I think for me I'm fairly clear that whatever investments happen in this country must be able to benefit the people of Kenya. That's, I think, is statement number one. Statement number two, we must then be able to realize that as we are investing, we are attracting investors. So how do we make the climate favorable to them? And I think Inea has made a point at the end, which I think is extremely important, but we'll ignore. We must balance the interests of both groups. We must balance the interests of the investor and the interests of the citizen. Unfortunately, a lot of the times we speak, depending on what our viewpoints are, as if the investor is superior to the citizens. The other times we speak as if the investor is not putting in money. I think the element of balancing is critical. And what are the things that ensure we balance? The things that ensure we balance are the kind of policies and laws we put in place. The second thing that ensures we balance is how effective do we then implement those laws and policies. The third thing that ensures we balance is how well do we then resolve any disputes that come out of it. And if you read also a different report yesterday, there's a report that measures the rule of law across the world. And that report said that Kenya's number was, I think, 100 and something out of 122. We're actually in the bottom 20, telling you that our environment for dealing with all those things, our environment for having clear policies and laws, our environment for enforcing those laws effectively, and environment for resolving disputes is still lopsided. So you will hear investors crying, you will hear citizens crying. At the end of the day, the only people who benefit are people who are gaming the system, and that is what we must sort, both in this issue of oil and in all the other investments and governance decisions that affect this country.
All right, thank you. Mandugu?
Yeah, so on the issue of disclosure, those particular contracts, the way they were signed, obviously they had a confidentiality clause. But one thing that you have to understand is that that was done prior to the Constitution, to the promulgation of the Constitution. And in those particular clauses, disclosure was possible or was allowed if parties to the contract consented to that particular disclosure.
But this particular contract with the Talo, that was it was not before the promulgation of the Constitution.
No. The PSC, it was signed before.
Okay.
It was signed before.
All right.
Now the question is this: what we need to look at, even as jurists, is that what is the effect of the promulgation of the Constitution in respect to prior contracts that have been signed?
Okay.
One thing that is very clear: me and you, we cannot sit down and agree to go contrary to to violate the Constitution.
Exactly.
That is not possible. So basically, I think what ought to have been done at that time, especially on matters of disclosure, then they ought to have been renegotiated that particular clause, or to have parameters under which this particular disclosure will have to be made by operation of the law. Why am I saying that? When the Constitution came in, Article 166 gives Kenyans the right to benefit from investments in their land. This extraction that is going on obviously is a development of which the people in Turkana, or where the oil is found, expect some legitimate expectation. So there is a legitimate expectation for them to benefit from that particular development. Now, the problem is that if they are not able to get that expectation now, because of the procedures and processes that were contained in that particular agreement, then the best thing will have been is that make that disclosure and sensitize the people.
Yes, because
so that they can be able to manage that legitimate expectation that they have that has been given to them by the Constitution.
Right. Because
I think that is where the officials of the ministry need to look at. That's something that they need to have a look at. Because if you don't, then somebody who has been given a constitutional right will come and demonstrate he has a right to picket. He will stop the trucks. He will stop every other person from he'll actually stop the operations.
Thank you.
And they'll have a constitutional basis or legitimacy for them to do that particular.
Thank you. Right, let me just also just read tweets as we're winding up right now briefly. And of course, we shall be crossing over to Moi University where there is the 38th graduation. Dr. Andrew Sule is saying that the argument should be how we can make fortunes out of the oil discovery. The panel is so Babylonian or negative, right? Please give way to a positive day, guys. Yeah, you guys are Babylonians, eh? All right. Oh, we have also Clifford Derrick saying, Obath, what kind of value extract are you talking about? Or he's already left here, or have Keroshe hired you to conduct PR for them? Yeah, it's not a mistake. It's a tax fraud, and big organizations in much better place to commit such crimes because they can afford the heavy bribes that sustain it. This is what Clifford Derrick thinks. We have also William Shege saying wastage is a least problem. Auto theft is a main thing. We have also Paul Peke, right? He's saying, are we trying to kill our local establishments in the name of tax evasion, or it's simply a plot by a certain guy somewhere who thinks alcohol is haram? Right, that is the African spirits, Kirosh. What next, UBL? Or that can be touched because that can't be touched because of the big boys upstairs. This is what Peke is asking. Also, we have Kenneth Kabugi saying justice for dynasties. The law is for hustlers. Humphrey Karaoke and Tabitha Karanja are hustlers who made it. They must face the dirty law, not justice. Now I wonder who next from the house of hustlers. I agree with this statement from Mutai Ngunyi. Also, we have Tom saying we adopt IT system from other countries but fail to accompany it with the requisite ethos to achieve same efficiency as where the systems borrowed from, what we were talking about, Singapore. Also, we have Solomon Ambuku saying spot on to Dr. Odote. African countries' problem is their policy. Is their policy tax and is their policy ease, tax and steal? Yeah, whereas developed countries is tax and develop. This is what he's thinking. And lastly, John Gidanga, KRA is inefficient and unreliable. Recently, we have seen its own staff members being arraigned in court for internal graft involving extortion of huge amounts of money from big-time business people. Corruption in Kenya has become a culture and has crossed the Rubicon. Have we crossed the Rubicon? No, we shouldn't despair. I want to thank you, our panelists this morning. We're strapped for
Thank you.
time. I will have given you time to give your closing comments, but we have to cross over to also Moi University, where we have a graduation, which is the
Another
38th
place wasting of
graduation
money.
today. So thank you very much for your valid companies, also for your valid company and your contribution also on social media as well. Really thank you.